Morning. A few weeks back I built a mobile bench. It ticked a lot of the boxes for me, scratched an itch that I'd had for quite a long time, but where it fell down a little bit for me was simply in terms of weight. I'd aimed to get this in for under 25 kilos, and in truth it got close, but by the time you added the hardware into it, it was closer to 28, and that was getting a little bit heavy. Now there's all kinds of ways we can make something lighter. We can drill it full of holes, we can make it out of lighter material or thinner material. It got me thinking, what happens if you do all three? So I made this one, an ultralight portable bench. So in the end, as we'll see, I didn't actually have to drill it full of holes at all. Because what's really interesting is if you just use a thinner and lighter material, you can get a bench that's just as strong but less than half the weight. Let me show you what I've done. Now if you've seen the previous bench build, you've got a pretty good idea of what's coming here. It's a simple fold-up bench with legs that fold out on metal brackets, metal hinges. We've got a simple shelf. This one just fits in on French cleats, nothing fancy. You've got space for your rail storage as before. And that's kind of all there is to it. Except this one's half the weight of the previous one, even fully loaded. Without the hardware, without the rail square and the rail, without all your gubbins, all your bench dogs and stuff in the cubby at the end here, this bench comes in at just over 11 kilos. Considering the previous one was 28 fully loaded, that's an incredible saving. Again, it's virtually identical in terms of size. It's 1400 long, the frame is 500 wide, and the bench top is 600 wide, so you've got space to clamp along the front edge. You've got your standard array of 20mm holes on 96mm centres for your standard bench dogs and things. We'll come into that a little bit later. You've got these two little storage cubbies at either end. Keep whatever you want in there, regularly used pencils, tape measures, all the stuff that you need on a basic install. As I say, I've got the left-hand one dedicated to the dogs and things that I know that I'll need to use for this. And as usual, exactly the same as before, and exactly the same with all my MFT-style tops. I've routed in a Sacrificial Strip, and this has gone directly over the bench dog holes. So if you do put a bench dog in there, it becomes a low-profile dog. Super simple. That's just a nice tight friction fit. After time you might need to put a little bit of double-sided tape in there or recut it slightly wider once you've taken it in and out a few times. And again, I think what I'll do, rather than bellow at you from afar, I'll pack this up, I'll bring it into the workshop, and I'll take you through the changes that I've had to make to transfer from 18mm to 12mm. I tell you what, 11 kilos instead of 28 makes a big difference. I'm not going to dwell too much on this because the bench is, pretty much identical to the portable bench that I've built before. And if you want the gory details, the full story on that, then go and check out that video. But let's just take you quickly through it, just in case you haven't seen that. It's a, basic frame with the legs that fold in completely into the framework, so that it will sit completely flush on the floor if that's something you need to do. Often when I was doing installs, I'd need to do a long rip, and it's just easier to do that when you're on the floor. So this is just a way of keeping the workpiece off the deck, basically. I've mentioned the Sacrificial Strip. Just as before, it's designed with the bench dogs square in mind with the MFT dogs that it has attached to it. Fit those on. Those will go into the 96mm standard MFT style holes, and that will give you a square cut all day long. You pop your workpiece in there, butt it up, and cut away to your heart's content. Just as before, you can also include, bear with me, this is really profesh, isn't it? Yeah, as before, you can add in the standard bench dogs fence on a set of fence dogs in there as well, and get full flag stops and everything that you need to do repeat cuts on site quickly and easily. And again, when you're finished with all that, snug. Or if you need to do some other cutting, then you can either drop that straight around and you've got your rail square back, or just take it off completely and you've just got a regular rail to do whatever you need. And then, just like before, at the end of the working day, when you're all sorted, you can take the you can store the MFT dogs in the cubbies. You can store your rail and square inside as usual. Pop the legs back in, and just as before, there's space for the fence under here. Flip the flaps around, just like that. Now, because the top is only 12mm, you might find that that doesn't grip quite as well as before, so what I would suggest is just popping a couple of M8 knobs on there. Most of the time it's fine, and most of the time you're going to be carrying it like that anyway. But that's the basics of it. Let's talk for a minute about the construction and the actual materials. I made the whole thing out of 12mm Poplar plywood. Poplar plywood, I've never used it before. Poplar plywood is about 40% of the weight of birch ply, so it's used a lot in caravans and RVs and that kind of thing. I think I first saw Joey Chalk over at King Post Timberworks use it on a project, and because it's so lightweight and yet still nice quality and very strong, it's perfect for this kind of application. In fact, the unladen without the hardware, 11 kilos, is actually, the whole bench is lighter than just the MDF top in the old bench. So that'll give you an idea of the proportion of the weight of it. The actual construction is really super simple. The framework is just glued and screwed at the ends. I've put a few pins in there, Norm Abrams style, just a couple of brads while the glue was setting, and then added a couple of screws later on. But everything else, the little cubbies and things, they're just held in place by glue and nails. I've used these slightly different folding brackets, folding hinges for the legs this time, and the previous ones they have an slightly awkward little lever to activate them. These ones have a little sort of push button which makes it a lot easier, so no need to put a piece of wire in there or anything. Now the legs are just laminated up from a double thickness, so they're only 24mm thick. Obviously in the previous bench made from 18mm, that made the legs 36mm thick, 1.5 inches or so. And it does mean that it's a little bit, I wouldn't say spindly, but it's definitely built for weight rather than stability. And the shelf, and it drops in, does pull things together pretty well, but there is a little bit of movement there. You've got to balance that, you know, what you want for yourself really. Do you want something that's super stable, but that's a pain in the neck to lug up 3 flights of stairs if you're fitting wardrobes in an attic, or do you want something that's will do the job but is lightweight? I know which one I would rather carry up 3 flights of stairs, but that's a decision for you to make. I think with the benefit of hindsight, and I may do this anyway, you could actually triple up the legs, make them a 3-layer, which would probably add a little bit of beefiness to them, and maybe find some better way to fix the shelf in place. So I've just taken the ends of the shelf and cut them at an angle and put half of the angle inside the mid rail on the legs, and then I've trimmed the shelf end, the length of it slightly, so that it's a fairly easy fit, because you don't want to be fighting to get that in. And all you want to do is get the bench set up. And of course the huge benefit of using a simple cleat system like this is that the whole thing strips down really easily. And there you go, all done and ready to go. Now, is this for you? Well, you know, I built this to be the lightest version of my portable bench that I could actually make. Obviously you could drill holes in this as well to make it even lighter, but honestly I think 11 kilos is probably light enough. And as I said earlier, it's a balance between getting something that's light but also that's doing the job. I opted to make the whole thing at a 12mm poplar. You could probably, if you don't mind adding a little bit of weight, you can make the whole thing at an 18mm poplar. Again, 40% of the weight of birch ply. With the hardware, you'd get that down to probably around 19, 20 odd kilos. So pretty good, and you'd still get the sturdiness of the 18mm ply. But these are all sort of starting points. You know, you can do whatever you like with this. This is what I've done with mine, and I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've purchased the plans for the 18mm bench, the previous bench, I've got a sort of conversion chart for you, and I'll make that freely available. I'll put links down in the video description below to where you can pick that up. There will be a set of plans for a 12mm version, which will be out on my Etsy. If they're not out now, they'll be up there very soon, so keep an eye on that, and there'll be a link in the video description as well, of course. I made the MFT top in my usual way with the LR32 system. I've talked about that in videos before, but again, if you don't have the will or the patience or perhaps the tools to do that, then I'm sure Makeup Formatic CNC would be happy to give you a price for a 12mm top, or just stick with an 18mm top and accept the fact that it's going to be, you know, a third as heavy again. And also, of course, a quick shout out to Ralph at Bench Dogs for the hardware that I've used for this. The Bench Dogs rail square and the MFT dogs are particularly useful, and of course the Bench Dogs fence as well. There are links in the video description down below. And don't forget 5% discount with the offer code 10-minute workshop. Good stuff. But that's kind of it, I think, for this week. There's not only so much you can say about, you know, the same version of the bench again, only lighter weight. I hope you've enjoyed it and I hope you find it useful. I hope that's kind of proved something to you. It certainly proved something to me, that a 12mm thick, a bench based around 12mm thick material is good enough for what I want it to do. But that's entirely up to you, of course, and depends entirely on what you want to do with your portable bench and how you intend to use it. I think I'll call that done for now, though. There are links in the video description down below to everything that I've shown here today, so be sure to take a look for additional information. But I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, give it a big thumbs up or leave me a comment down below. And as always, thanks so much to my Patreon pals and my YouTube members for their amazing support. I really appreciate the comments and the feedback on the behind the scenes videos, the exclusive content and the weekly vlogs that are just my way of saying thanks so much to those who do provide member support. But that's it for this week, I think. Thanks again for watching. As always, stay safe, take care, and I'll see you next time. Hey, wait a minute. Did I leave my camera outside?